Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West. It's time to wrap up week 81 and the 10th series of today's Tolkien Times with Silmarillion Saturday. These Saturdays are our chance to revisit the history and legends of the Elder Days, whether from the Silmarillion, unfinished tales, or more. Now, last week, we watched the White Council drive Sauron from Dol Guldur and learned that Gandalf paying attention to the hobbits was a really good thing. Today, we recap the War of the Ring and bring the Third Age to a close. But those who saw the things that were done in that time, deeds of valor and wonder, have elsewhere told the tale of the War of the Ring, and how it ended both in victory unlooked for and in sorrow long foreseen. Here let it be said that in those days the heir of Isildur arose in the north, and he took the shards of the sword of Elendil, and in Imladris they were reforged, and he went then to war, a great captain of men. He was Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the 39th heir in the right line from Isildur, and yet more like to Elendil than any before him. Battle there was in Rohan, and Curanir the traitor was thrown down, and Isengard broken. And before the city of Gondor a great field was fought, and the Lord of Morgul, captain of Sauron, there passed into darkness, and the heir of Isildur led the host of the west to the black gates of Mordor. In that last battle were Mithrandir, and the sons of Elrond, and the king of Rohan, and lords of Gondor, and the heir of Isildur with the Dunedain of the north. There, at the last, they looked upon death and defeat, and all their valor was in vain, for Sauron was too strong. Yet in that hour was put to the proof that which Mithrandir had spoken, and help came from the hands of the weak when the wise faltered. For as many songs have since sung, it was the Periannath, the little people, dwellers in hillsides and meadows, that brought them deliverance. For Frodo the halfling, it is said, at the bidding of Mithrandir, took on himself the burden, and alone with his servant he passed through peril and darkness, and came at last, in Sauron's despite, even to Mount Doom. And there, into the fire where it was wrought, he cast the great ring of power, and so at last it was unmade, and its evil consumed. Then Sauron failed, and he was utterly vanquished and passed away like a shadow of malice, and the towers of Barad-dûr crumbled in ruin, and at the rumor of their fall many lands trembled. Thus peace came again, and a new spring opened on earth, and the heir of Isildur was crowned king of Gondor and Arnor, and the might of the Dunedain was lifted up, and their glory renewed. In the courts of Minas Anor, the white tree flowered again, for a seedling was found by Mithrandir in the snows of Mindalluin that rose tall and white above the city of Gondor. And while it still grew there, the elder days were not wholly forgotten in the hearts of the kings. Now all these things were achieved for the most part by the counsel and vigilance of Mithrandir. And in the last few days he was revealed as a lord of great reverence, and clad in white he rode into battle. But not until the time came for him to depart was it known that he had long guarded the red ring of fire. At the first that ring had been entrusted to Círdan, lord of the havens, but he had surrendered it to Mithrandir, for he knew whence he came, and whither at last he would return. "Take now this ring," he said, "for thy labors and thy cares will be heavy, but in all it will support thee and defend thee from weariness. For this is the ring of fire, and herewith, maybe, thou shalt rekindle hearts to the valor of old in a world that grows chill. But as for me, my heart is with the sea, and I will dwell by the grey shores, guarding the havens until the last ship sails. Then I shall await thee." White was that ship, and long was it a building, and long it awaited the end of which Círdan had spoken. But when all these things were done, and the heir of Isildur had taken up the lordship of men, and the dominion of the west had passed to him, then it was made plain that the power of the three rings also was ended, and to the firstborn the world grew old and gray. In that time, the last of the Noldor set sail from the havens and left Middle-earth forever. And latest of all, the keepers of the three rings rode to the sea, and Master Elrond took there the ship that Círdan had made ready. In the twilight of autumn it sailed out of Mithlond, until the seas of the bent world fell away beneath it, and the winds of the round sky troubled it no more. And borne upon the high airs above the mists of the world, it passed into the ancient west, and an end was come for the Eldar of story and of song. And I can't be the only one tearing up here. The end was come for the Eldar of story and of song. Thousands of years of history, from the waking of the elves at Cuiviénen to here at the end of the Third Age, and it's all over. But going back to that passage as a whole, what an incredible way to summarize the events of The Lord of the Rings. It makes me realize there is a full-blown story or more behind every one of these historical summaries we see of things. And man, I want to read them all. For his sake, though, I hope Sam didn't read this account. Frodo the halfling took on himself the burden, and alone with his servant he passed through peril and darkness. Wait just a servant moment. That was Samwise Gamgee, and Frodo wouldn't have made it without his Sam. But that's the way of these chronicles, short, concise summaries of major historical events. And also, like chronicles, the truth is glanced over. Did you notice that in this, Frodo is said to have cast the ring into the fire himself? That's interesting. I don't really know why Tolkien would have changed that, but let's be honest. In stories told of the event later, it's probably just going to say, yeah, Frodo got there and then he threw the ring in. Not that Frodo's going around telling the lie. I'm sure he has absolutely no reason to tell it otherwise, other than just what happened. But that's a really complicated story. Well, Gollum showed up, this guy who, by the way, we have to explain, had the ring before. And then Ilúvatar did this little blink, and there goes Gollum off the edge of the thing. And he's the one who, really hard to explain that. Maybe just say Frodo threw it in, right? So sometimes the chronicles aren't 100% accurate. So despite this being the end of the Eldar of story and of song, we get a mention that their days are remembered. That while the white tree flowered in Gondor, the elder days were not wholly forgotten in the hearts of the kings. I love that. And then we get this huge reminder of just how essential Gandalf was to the accomplishment of all of these things, right? He's the organizer who makes sure that every person plays their part and every part is coordinated to work on that timeline. But then it's time to say farewell. And what a beautiful goodbye it is. Speaking of goodbyes, folks, that does it for this week's Silmarillion Saturday. Thank you for joining me. The TTT is heading on its usual break between series now, and like I mentioned back on March 1st, I've moved to a 7-week series with 3 weeks off. So that means that Series 11 and Week 82 will begin on June 2nd. See you then. Hey, during that break, though, there's a special day. We can't really observe it with an episode because there won't be one. Next Thursday, May 15th, is the 2nd anniversary of today's Tolkien Times. That's 10 full series, 81 weeks, 486 episodes, 556 actually, if you count the bonus Patreon premium episodes. Thank you all for listening. Please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can get an ad-free feed, bonus episodes, and be a part of my content council to help me decide what I'll talk about next series. Now, podcast listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. On YouTube, subscribe to the channel to get all of the PPP productions. And please, everybody, follow @PrancingPonyPod on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.